And I keep this map to remind me that I should be focused a little bit. And it just fell out, and I showed it to a Kinshana. And these are the lovely countries that I'm responsible for. And if any of you want to help me preach in these places, you're absolutely welcome. Afghanistan? Anyone? Iran? How about Iraq? Maybe Syria? Anyone? Lebanon? We just came from Lebanon. Lebanon's a beautiful place. It's not what you think it is. It's messed up as far as infrastructure is concerned. It's sort of as crazy as India, but it's really beautiful. It's on the Mediterranean Sea, and it's 65% Christian. 65% Christian, like Arabic people who are very devout Christians, and then you have Sunnis, and you have Shias, and you have Hezbollah, which is an international terrorist organization sponsored by Iran. But they're part of the government, We were just there, we had beautiful programs, didn't we? The people are super, absolutely super. I mean, anywhere you go in the world, and you do Krishna Kirtan, and then when they become a little soft in Krishna Kirtan, and you start just explaining the fact to the people that they're not bodies, and they're not minds, and they're not, Christian or Muslim or Hindu or whatever just because they were born in a particular family, then they immediately can catch Krishna consciousness. If you just take them, first you have some kirtan, and that softens up the shell. And then you explain reality to them. Everybody can take to Krishna consciousness. A few more countries you can help me preach in. Morocco, I hear that's a very far out place. Algeria, very far out place. Tunisia, well, they say it's a beautiful place. All the Tunisians I meet are very, very nice people. Libya? Anyone? Egypt. Egypt is another interesting place. What about Saudi Arabia? Anyone like to go to Saudi Arabia and preach Krishna consciousness? How about Yemen? Does anybody know what's going on in Yemen now? Civil war. And then I guess, what's your name? Chaitanya Swarup? Chaitanya Swarup. How about Ethiopia? Haile Selassie, he's God for the Rastas. Addis Ababa is on a very high plateau. They say that good things grow on high plateaus. You could fill your bead bag with something other than your hand. and fill your head with something other than thoughts of Krishna. South Sudan. Does that sound exciting for anyone? South Sudan. Sudan. Chad. Niger. You pronounce it Niger?
Yeah, Niger.
Niger. Mali. What about Mali? Anybody interested in Mali? Burkina Faso. Has anyone ever been to Burkina Faso?
Don't even know about that.
What about Mauritania? And then the Western Sahara. They all speak Arabic over there, so I'm trying to learn a little bit of Arabic so I can at least go in and start trying to communicate to the people. Oh, and so, we have a lot of ground to cover, and we're already late. Just one other point before we have a little bit of kirtan. This morning, the Kinshana Guru, he gave class, and how did you say that verse?
it by Facebook Messenger.
Okay. This was the purport. Srila Prabhupada says, we have to follow in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, executing our mission peacefully, or, if necessary, kicking the heads of such protesters. And Swarup Damodar Prabhu, he told me about, the purport, and I immediately told him the story. Because Prabhupada used to say things like, he used to say, what he said in this, he said, kicking the heads, of such protesters. And then Srila Prabhupada used to say at different times things like, if fools declare that Krishna is dead, he would say, beat on their head with shoe. Did you ever hear that before? Beat on their head with shoe. So one time, I was on traveling sankirtan, and we purchased a school bus, and we painted it blue, and inside we had a temple room, and we had a shower, and we had a kitchen in the back, and about 8 of us traveled around in the school bus. So our temple president gave us permission to go on sankirtan for 2 weeks. So we came back 6 months later. And what we did is we left Canada, we drove to the United States, and we traveled south because winter was coming up, and we traveled all the way down to Louisiana, and we did sankirtan at the Mardi Gras, this big festival that they have, and we were doing sankirtan in all these southern cities, and down south where we're from, it's really sort of like the Bible Belt in America, and you'd always sort of, come up with some people speaking out very strongly at times about us doing sankirtan. So we went to one city which I very affectionately refer to as the center of the universe. Like the Srimad Bhagavatam describes how Naimisharanya is like if the universe is like a wheel, Naimisharanya is in the middle of it. So this city, which is the center of the universe, is also known as Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I'm from. And so we were doing sankirtan in Nashville, and this was like probably about 74. Yeah, maybe 74, maybe 73, something like that. And at that time, it was like a real transition was going on in many of the cities in North America, where, like, up until that time, the cities, the city centers had been primarily, white. But then shopping malls came into existence, and so the whites started doing their shopping in the malls outside, and then the African Americans, they were coming, lots of African Americans in the city centers. So we were on sankirtan, and I had one godbrother. He's passed away now for many years. His name was Tarapanath, and we were best friends. He was a real skinny guy, and he had a face. He sort of looked like an ostrich, and he wore these big glasses. He was a funny-looking fellow, and he was humorous, and he could be like he could really be sarcastic. He was so intelligent. I think he'd been trained in law before he became a devotee or something like that. He was sharp as a tack. So he was down in the corner, downtown, and he was passing out Prabhupada's books. And it was a good day for him. And he had like a whole group of people around them, and they all had books in their hands, and they were getting ready to just start pulling out the money to pay for the books. And then one African American lady came up, and she was very big. She was very, in America, people get big. I don't know if you've seen pictures of like it's the most obese country in the world. And people are really big in America. And this lady, she was very, very big. And she came up and she sussed out that we were selling Hare Krishna books, and it was not a book about Lord Jesus. And she sort of like flipped and she started screaming at the top of her voice, "Krishna is dead! Krishna is dead! Krishna is dead!" And people started giving their books back to Taraknath. And because Prabhupada had always said, if anyone says Krishna is dead, beat on their head with a shoe. Taraknath bent over. He took off his shoe. Whack! You know, and then like 3 seconds later, police cars came and they took this skinny guy with a robe on, you know. The skinny guy with the robe on, threw him in the back of the car, and they took him down to the police station. And then we had to bail him out. And of course, bail was only like $100, you know. So I mean, but even for us back then, $100 was like a lot of money. Then he had to go back to welcome Sunil Mohan, Hare Krishna, and so then he still had to go for the court case, you know, before the judge. So me and the other Sankirtan devotees, we started coming with some strategy, you know, what to do. And we were saying, Taraknath, what was the lady like? And he said, she was big. She was really big. I mean, she was a big one. And I said, well, you know, if we like use some logical deduction, you know, people generally get big because they like to eat a lot. And everybody agreed, yeah, she must be a big eater. So Taraknath and I are both cooks. So we went into the kitchen that we had in our Sankirtan bus. Boy, we started cooking so many things. We were cooking ladus, gulab jamans, sandeshes, samosas, cupcakes. We made a box about this big, but just like this ecstatic Mahaprasadam. We offered it to our Gornatai deities. I mean, it was a big box. It was big. It was big. And then the next part of the strategy, we had to head her off before she got into the courthouse. So we found out what time the courthouse opens, and we were like the first guys on the parking lot in the morning, and we were waiting for this lady to come. And as soon as she appeared, Taraknath went running up to her with this huge box of these beautiful, delicious things. He was saying, "Ma'am, I am so sorry. Please forgive me, ma'am. I am so sorry." And he just handed this box to her. And she didn't say anything. She just looked at the box and the hand went inside. It was like, swear on my life. Swear on my life. And then, you know, but she wasn't saying much. Then we finally got into court, and then they called the case, you know, Mr. Taraknath against, you know, whatever, and the big one. And as soon as the case was called, the lady stood up and she said, "Judge, I want to say these are very nice boys. And Judge, I want to drop this case. And, and Prabhupada said, thank you, man. So Prabhupada said, if there's opposition, give them big boxes of prasada. And on that same trip, Raghunath and I got arrested in Memphis, Tennessee. Which is a sacred place of pilgrimage because that's the city I was born in. It's on the holy river, the Mississippi. And it has like exalted people who were from that place, like myself, Elvis Presley, Aretha Franklin, James Brown. I mean, maybe there's something. We were there, and so we decided to do sankirtan one afternoon on Elvis Presley Boulevard. Really, this huge intersection. And so we're out there with our devotees and everything, and this is like just 8 years after ISKCON's been established, or 7 years. And down south, nobody knew who in the world we were. We were like the men from Mars. And all of a sudden, we're out on this intersection during rush hour. We're passing out, cars will stop and go up to them with the Back to Godhead magazine or a Krishna book or something like that. And then it took about 5 minutes. And then it was like the cop gets out and he says, boys, get inside the car, we're going to take you downtown. So we got in the car and they took us downtown and they booked us. For I forget for what charge there was. So we were waiting, and it was just time to get ready to go inside of our jail cell where we were going to stay that evening. And they made us take off our Brahmin threads because they were afraid we'd hang ourselves. Using our Brahmin threads. But we were being very polite. And then, this old, desk sergeant or whatever you call it, he was sitting there and he looked at Raghunath and he said, boy, you're going to have to give me your glasses before you go in there. And I looked up very politely and I said, but sir, he's so blind, he can't see without his glasses. And he looked at me and said, boy, that ain't nothing you want to see inside of that jail cell. So then I tried my luck. We got inside and I tried my luck. I said, could I make my one telephone call? And they said, sure. So then I phoned my mother in Nashville, and she said, baby, where are you? I said, I'm in the Memphis jail, Mom. And I'd been born in Memphis, and we lived there till I was like 8 or something like that. And my mom's best friend lived in Memphis. And so I said, and her best friend's name was Jackie. I said, could you please phone up Jackie and have her come down here and bail us out? My mom said, sure thing, honey, but just do one thing. Please try to stay out of jail. I've tried. We were like when we were young, I was going to say we had a lot of conviction when we were young. We still have a lot of conviction. One time somehow or other I ended up in Miami, Florida, doing sankirtan. And I was in a parking lot in some shopping center and I was passing out books. And one policeman came up. He said, son, you ain't allowed to sell these books down here. You're under arrest. And I said, sir, you can't arrest me. He said, why the hell not? And I said, because I'm doing this for Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, son, give it back the car. We had so much conviction when we were young. I mean, maybe you've heard other people say this. You know, we had so much conviction. We really felt the entire world was going to be Krishna conscious in 20 years. Have you ever heard that before? We were just absolutely convinced that Krishna consciousness was going to touch everybody's heart in the whole world in 20 years. And that's why we were as, I don't want to use the word fanatical, but, we were very determined to do what Prabhupada requested us to do, which was, and what was Prabhupada's request? I mean, we know that Prabhupada requested so many things, but Prabhupada, many times he would say just like this, I am an old man, I humbly request you, kindly help me spread this Krishna consciousness movement. Have you ever read that before? Mm. Kindly help me spread this Krishna consciousness movement. Kindly help me spread this Krishna consciousness movement. And so that's what we did. Kindly, we tried to help Prabhupada in any way we could. And there are so many devotees who are sitting here who have been devotees as long as I've ever been coming to South Africa. And that's what they've been doing also, assisting Prabhupada spread the Krishna consciousness movement. And now we're sitting with, the youth and some of our older devotees, maybe the parents of the youth. But the same request is for the youth in your generation, coming from Prabhupada, kindly assist in spreading this Krishna consciousness movement. And he would say that a lot. He would say, now I'm an old man. He would say, I can be out of the scene at any moment. Have you ever read like that? I can be out of the scene. Meaning, time can take me out at any time. But then he would say, therefore, you are young and you are having, vitality of your youth. Kindly assist me in spreading this Krishna consciousness movement. So since Prabhupada is our founder Acharya, that's the message that keeps coming down through every generation. Kindly assist Prabhupada in helping to give Krishna Nam Sankirtana and the message of Bhagavad Gita and the message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world. But stay out of jail. Okay, let's check that out a moment. Jaya Radha Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Jaya Kunja Bihari Jayo Giri Bardari, Jayo Giri Bardari. Jasodanandana, Jayo Brhad-Bhagavtamrta, Jayo Jasodanandana, Jayo Brhad-Bhagavtamrta, Jasodanandana, Jayo Brhad-Bhagavtamrta, Jayo Jasodanandana, Jayo Brhad-Bhagavtamrta. Hey Jasodanandana, Jayo Brhad-Bhagavtamrta, Jayo Jasodanandana, Jayo Brhad-Bhagavtamrta. Jamuna Tiravanachari, Jayo Kunja Bihari, Jayo Kunja Bihari, 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 Jayo Rama, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jaya Rama, Jaya Kunja Bihari, Jayo Radha Jayo Jasodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jayo Jasodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Dhiravanachari Jayo Kunjavihari Jayo Kunjavihari Jamuna Dhiravanachari Jayo Kunjavihari Jaya Jamuna Dhiravanachari Jayo Kunjavihari Jayo Kunjavihari Jamuna Dhiravanachari Jaya Kunjavihari Jaya Kunjavihari Hey Jamuna Dhiravanachari Jayo Kunjavihari Jayo Kunjavihari Jamuna Dhiravanachari Jaya Kunjavihari Jaya Kunjavihari Jayo Paramadava Jaya Kunjavihari Jaya Jayo Radhamadava Jayo Kunjavihari Jaya Radhamadava Jaya Kunjavihari Jayo Radhamadava Jayo Kunjavihari Jaya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, The other night we were speaking about His Grace Eindervu, and one time some years ago, it was commencement night at the Gurukula, and I would always hang out with the senior class, and so they invited me to come do kirtan at commencement there. So I was singing this melody. When I was singing the melody, I looked up on the top floor veranda, and Eindervu, and about 8 or 9 guys, they were like leaning over and they were looking at the kirtan. And they were observing. And then after the kirtan, Eindervu, he came to me, he said, "You like my melody?" And I said, "Well, yes, I do like the melody." And he told me, he said, "I made that melody."
Oh.
And I just asked Kitchener if he knew, if that was, if he knew, and he said he wasn't sure. But whenever I used to chant that with Madhava Prabhu, Madhava would immediately just go into this special sort of like funk on the mridanga, and we would look at one another, and he sort of like indicated that he knew that was Ayanda Prabhu's melody, and we would always sort of like point above and say, maybe we'll get some, blessing showering down on us, chanting this mantra. Okay, now it's a 11:45. Shoo. We have boot camp today. Everybody is very jacked up about boot camp. Everybody is ready for karate and break their backs. They've been trying to get me to come also, and I said I'll only go if he makes it easy for me. It's interesting, it's like, when you write Arabic, you start from this side of the book, writing down. When you write English, you open from this side of the book. Okay. Okay, Hare Krishna. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Vishnu Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Charani Namaste Swami Paschitani Sitani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Dhamma Shri Radha Shri Gopani Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram. Yesterday we started speaking about the Brhad-Bhagavtamrta, and I mentioned how it was compiled by Srila Sanatana Goswami, and it was the first of the literatures that were compiled by the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, and mentioned how Lord Chaitanya had given the Goswamis the responsibility to write books that explain the science of Krishna. And it's a curious thing that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's Shad Aishwarya Purna. He's exactly like Sri Krishna himself. He's full in all opulence. But he only gave 8 verses of instruction, which is the Sikshastikam. That was Lord Chaitanya's written instructions. But his whole life was, like Srila Prabhupada, in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, there's the life and precepts of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wherein, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, they say that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was the ideal preacher, he was the ideal example of the teachings of Sri Krishna given in Bhagavad Gita. Whereas Sri Krishna concludes the Bhagavad Gita by giving us all the instruction to surrender exclusively to me. Don't surrender to anything else, surrender to me. And Sri Krishna explains that the fruit of that will be that by your act of full, utter surrender, and by giving up all the other yogas, by giving up all the other dharmas, by giving up all the other aspirations, is that I will reciprocate with you in a way that if there's anything which is dirty inside of your heart, I will take that. And Srila Prabhupada would always say that this is the situation when a person surrenders, then what that person has, it becomes the possession of the person that he surrenders to. It's like about a year and a half ago or something like that, two of my very nice disciples in Dubai, Juga Kishore and his wife Kishori, they moved into a very, very big, nice house, and they were having a program to, inviting the devotees to their home to have kirtan and so forth and so on. And they didn't necessarily, want that to be sort of like their official house opening, and they didn't really particularly want me to know that it was going on, but I found out. And so what I did is me and Akinshana and Sachi Sutta and Vrindavan Kirtan, we were all in Vrindavan. I guess we were all in Vrindavan. We were someplace nearby, so I bought plane tickets for all of us, and we pitched up in Dubai. And so they have like hundreds of devotees at their house, and they're having some kirtan, and I come walking in the door and I said, why is there a kirtan and I've not been invited? And then our yatra leader, Sri Ballava, he walked up and he said, Maharaj, he said, he's South Indian, so he's very South Indian. Maharaj, they're your disciples, Maharaj. Therefore, it is your house, you're welcome. I said, if it's my house, then where are the keys? Where are the papers? Where are all the documents? So this is the idea that if we lead the life of full surrender to Krishna, we become surrendered to the Lord. And then even if there's something bad remaining in the heart, the Lord gives us His guarantee that He will take that and that will become His responsibility. Is that the wind blowing outside?
Yep. Yeah.
The storm is coming. Ooh. So, and then Krishna says, and then what happens? When the heart actually, when I accept whatever evil may be within your heart, whatever sin, whatever pap karma may be within your heart, whatever this anartha that we have, if I accept all these things, then your heart becomes pure. And when the heart becomes pure, then you become qualified for moksha, or you become qualified for liberation. And this moksha, moksha, in the Vaishnava sense of the word, has nothing to do with any type of impersonal liberation, definitely. And Vaishnavas, they don't really wish to accept any type of liberation. But according to Srila Shukadeva Goswami, in the second canto, the Srimad Bhagavatam, he says, Muktir hit vanyata rupam swarupena vyavastiti. You knew that? Huh? Yeah, of course Prabhupada always quotes that, because this is the definition of liberation for Vaishnava. Meaning, mukti means two things. First thing is immediately all of our material conceptions are finished. Meaning, we're no longer Shivanands, we're no longer Naidus, we're no longer Buddhalezis, we're no longer Smiths, we're no longer, Christian, we're no longer Muslim, we're no longer Hindu, we're no longer any of these different things. But we become situated in our eternal swarup, our eternal constitutional position, which is eternally resting within the heart, but now is in sleeping condition. Srila Prabhupada would always use the word that our relationship with Krishna now is in a dormant condition. Because again, as we said on the first night, we turned away. We turned our face to Krishna. And at that time, the relationship with Krishna went to sleep. And now what we're doing in the Krishna consciousness movement, by sitting here and talking about it, or by chanting, or by doing seva, or by serving Vaishnavas, each time we do that, we're turning back to Krishna. We're turning back to Krishna. As like I mentioned the other night, you stand in the sun. Like yesterday was a beautiful sunny day, right? And you stand in the sun and you look at the sun, and when you're looking at the brilliant sun in front of you, you don't see any shadows, do you? Shadow is only behind you. If you turn away from the sun, then all you see is shadows, right? So, this life that we've been leading since immemorial time, this is the life turned away from Krishna, where we have been observing shadows, and we have been trying to participate in relationship with shadows. We've been trying to extract some form of pleasure or happiness from shadows. But, if I ask all of you who are very intelligent people, can you have relationship with the shadow? You say, well, no. No. Das would rather sit and talk pleasantly with Yogini than try to communicate with her shadow. That's right. Actually, sometimes I'd rather talk to a shadow. Actually, it was she that said that about him. So Krishna consciousness means turning back around, transforming. So this mukti, the first aspect of mukti, all the material conceptions just finished. Or, how did Srila Rupa Goswami say it? Sarva upadi vinirmuktam tatparatena nirmuktam. Sarva upadi. All of the upadis, meaning the material concepts. Sarva upadi vinirmuktam tatparatena nirmalam. Nirmal. Mal is meaning dirt, right? Dirty things. Nirmal, no dirt. Like one nice Vaishnava name, Nirmal Chandra, the spotless moon. You heard that name before? Like when we were young, when Prabhupada lived at Brhad-Bhagavtamrta, the Goswami, his name was Nirmal Chandra Goswami. Nirmal Chandra. Nirmal. Tatparatena Nirmalam. So, first thing, material conception finished, and then second thing, situated in one's spiritual identity. And then we become qualified for going to Krishna and engaging in Krishna service directly. Like we said yesterday, what does Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam mean? The ever-increasing ocean of ecstasy. Because when we become Krishna conscious, we meet Krishna. And that's ecstasy. But it's not ecstasy that lasts for a moment. It's ecstasy that expands throughout eternity. It's just an ever-expanding ocean of spiritual bliss. By meeting Krishna, by being able to do seva for Krishna, being instructed. And we know that Srila Prabhupada says that we all have an inherent type of relationship with Krishna that will be uncovered when we become Krishna conscious. But he has said that some people, they may be Krishna's boyfriends. Some people, they may be Krishna's girlfriends. Some people, they may be like, assistants to Mother Yasoda. Some people may be servants of Krishna. So say we were Krishna's boyfriend, and then one of the other boyfriends would say, carry this rope, or bring this cow, or climb a tree, or wrestle on the banks of the Jamuna, or so many different things. But we're doing that with Krishna. Krishna is always the center. So, turning back to Krishna, remembering Krishna, that is our main business. And the Goswamis, they continually wrote all of these literatures to teach us how to turn back. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he only gave the 8 verses. Bas, that was it, Sikshastikam. But the Goswamis, they have taken Sikshastikam, and they have taken the message of Lord Chaitanya's practical life of devotion and surrender to Krishna as being the ideal example of the message of Bhagavad Gita and the ideal example of the life of the Bhagavatam. And the Goswamis, they have expanded it so that we can understand. Who has ever been in India, say like end of October, when it starts getting chilly at night? And people in India, they use rajas. You know rajas? Those big, thick cotton quilts. Have you seen those things? They weigh about, you can have one of these quilts on top of you, can weigh up to like 2 or 3 kilos. It's like, you got this weight on top. And it's just cotton inside. And when it starts getting cold, what do? They go to these people, and the people, they take the cover they take the quilt cover away, and they take your cotton, and they have a way of fluffing the cotton up. Has anyone ever seen that? Never. Prabhu has. A couple people have. Did you ever see that in India? No. They fluff the cotton up. Because over the wintertime, sleeping with, family of 8 Indians underneath your raja on the same bed in one room. The cotton gets all smashed down. But then they have these places where they fluff the cotton up and they stuff it back inside of the raja. Sikshastikam is like a piece of cotton, but it contains everything in Krishna consciousness within that small piece of cotton. And the Goswamis, what have they been doing right up to this modern day? The Goswamis, the Acharyas coming from the Goswamis, our present spiritual masters, what are they doing? They're taking that piece of cotton and they're fluffing it up so that we can see it, so we can understand it. Or it's like I've been asking so many of you guys. I haven't asked the ladies so much, but I said, what do you guys do? We work in a bank. We collect data. We provide it for our this, that, so forth and so on. Everything is done, through computer systems, on computer chips. Computer chips are so small. But you know that on a computer chip, there can be like a zillion pages of something. So the Goswamis, like Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, taking these messages of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and expanding by writing books so that we can understand. So the first book compiled was the Brhad-Bhagavtamrta, and yesterday we gave, a perspective of the first part of Brhad-Bhagavtamrta. Bhagavatamrita was spoken by Jaimini Rishi, and this is clarified in the beginning, so that Sanatana Goswami, he wants to avoid people in the future saying, oh, this is just some nice novel, adventure story that Sanatana wrote. He actually explains that in ancient Shastra the story is told. And it's the story that is told by Jaimini Rishi to Maharaj Janmejaya, who was the son of Parikshit Maharaj. And essentially, the story is based on Parikshit Maharaj has heard the message of the Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami. He has a few moments before he's going to die, and then his mother Uttara rushes in and says, what did he tell you? What is this unprecedented nectar that the Goswami spoke for 7 days? It was so good that you didn't fall asleep. I wish my classes were that good. I give a class, I look out, and like 3/4 of the audience is like this. It was so good, you didn't fall asleep in 7 days. You didn't eat in 7 days. You didn't drink in 7 days. What is this unprecedented nectar? And so, loving his mother, he shared the nectar. And he told her the story of Narada Muni's quest for understanding who are the devotees who have received the greatest mercy of the Lord. And so he tells. And then in the second division of the Brhad-Bhagavtamrta, the question is this. Again, is Maharaj Janmejaya, and he's speaking to Jaimini Rishi. And after hearing such a story, such a phenomenal story, you just can't stop. And he says, so what happened then? What happened then? It's sort of like, who has read first canto of Bhagavatam? So like beginning of the Bhagavatam, it sets the scene and it tells the story about the sages at Naimisharanya, and it tells about that and the questions of the sages, and then after the questions of the sages, what is the first story that's told in the Bhagavatam? Huh? First story in the Bhagavatam is Narada Muni and Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva has compiled all the Vedic literatures, but he hasn't specifically spoken about Krishna. Is that correct? And Narada comes, his spiritual master comes, and basically chastises him. In sweet words, but he chastises him. He says, you've done such a meritorious work, but you didn't tell people about Krishna. And so that goes on, and then Narada tells the story of his life, correct? And Narada explains how he came to the stage of perfection in Krishna consciousness just by sitting, when he was a child, just by sitting in the association of some Bhaktivedantas and listening to them talk. Is that correct? That's the story? And then his mother died, and then he left home, and the whole story. So Narada tells all that to Vyasadeva, and then Vyasadeva, and then Narada leaves. And so naturally, what was the next question? You know, Shonaka Rishi, the head of the sages, he puts his hands up, he said, then what? After Narada left, what did Vyasadeva do? You know, because they wanted the continuation of hearing the nectar, hearing the story about Krishna. And he says, well, Vyasadeva sat down in trance, and he looked into the Kali Yuga, and he saw everything horrible. Everything absolutely horrible. And then there's that verse, Anarto Pasamam Shakshat. You know it? What's your name? Yavat. Sometimes when I say verses, I see that Yavat's lips are moving, you know. It's interesting, in Dubai, they study so much Shastra that when you give a class in the congregation, you recite a verse, and you'll have 50 people recite the verse along with you. It's very amazing. So then there's the verse in the Bhagavatam, it says, Anarto Pasamam Shakshat Bhakti Yoga Adhoksaje. Lokasya Ajanato Vidvam Sitam Sattvatam Sahitam. It says, Vyasadeva looked into Kali Yuga, and he saw how everybody was caught up with anarthas, thinking that anarthas were going to make them happy. Again, back to the point, thinking the shadows are going to make us happy. But shadows can't make us happy. They can't make us happy at all. And anarthas are like that. Unnecessary things. It's like, what are our biggest anarthas? Mobile phones. I mean, we all lived without these things. Remember how nice it was, Sunil? When we didn't have mobile phones? You know, first we got mobile phones and we felt like we were on top of the world. And then you were trying to figure out for some years how not to give mobile phones to your daughters. But ultimately your daughters conquered you. Anarthas, you know, we're sitting here in katha, we're sitting in kirtan, and we're checking mobile phones. It's crazy. It's not necessary. All the other vices that people have in society, not necessary for happiness. Well, alcohol, drugs, you know, all these things, not necessary. But Vyasadeva saw that in Kali Yuga, people's intelligence is going to be so small that they thought that the anarthas are going to be the way in order to become happy and satisfied. He said, Lokasya, he said, Anarto Pasamam Shakshat Bhakti Yoga Dhoksaje. The only way to go beyond anarthas is to absorb yourself Bhakti Yoga Adhoksaje, to perform pure Bhakti Yoga to Adhoksaja, to Krishna, who is beyond the mind and the senses. And his Lokasya Ajanato Vidwan, his Lokasya Ajanato, the Loka, the people in general, they're foolish, they can't understand that. So therefore, Vidvam, the great Brahmin, Srila Vyasadeva, Sattvata Samhitam. He wrote the Sattvata Samhitam, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam. That we would read Srimad Bhagavatam to become free from anarthas, because we'd hear about Krishna. And that's the process for becoming free from anarthas. So here you have it. Parikshit Maharaj, getting ready to die. His mother, what happened? What did he tell you? He shares the nectar. In the beginning of the second part, you know, Maharaj Janmejaya, he just can't leave it hanging. He has to hear what happened next with my father. You know, what did my father do at that point? You know, what happened? Please tell me. And then, so Jaimini Rishi speaks, and he starts explaining that Uttara looked at her son, and she said, my dear son, I have a question. Somehow you have to clarify this question for me. it's eating me up. It's a doubt that I have. I have to become free from this. You have just told me about the greatest and the most phenomenal devotees of the Lord, who are those ladies, those young girls who live in Vrindavan, who gave everything to the Lord. They're the most phenomenal people. What is the place like where they live? If they're like so super, so phenomenal, so excellent, what must their abode be like? And then she says, certainly it can't be anything in this sphere where they live. And certainly it can't be in the planets of heaven. Because we know that the planets of heaven, even though things are pretty good up there, still everything comes to an end in heaven. And the people who generally go to heaven on the strength of the pious activities that they perform, when they exhaust their piety, they have to return back to this world. So certainly these great people cannot live in the higher planets of heaven. And she said, and certainly they don't live in the impersonal abode. And they're so great. And their love for Krishna is so profound that they're not interested just to see any particular form of Krishna, but they're only interested in seeing one form of Krishna. And that form is the form of Shyamasundar. So even these people, even Vaikuntha is not a fit place for them to live. The Vaikuntha planets, innumerable Vaikuntha planets, totally transcendental in nature, but it's not a fit place. What is the nature of that place? Please, my dear son, clarify this for me. And so Parikshit Maharaj goes, he looks at his watch, and he says, that bird's coming fast. Somebody's going to get real hurt. And I know who it is. And he says, Mother, he said, generally, at this point of one's life, one should not talk. One should just fix his mind on the Lord, and one should get ready. He said, but you're my mother, what can I do? And he told her, he said, I could explain the answer to this question on the basis of the Shruti and the Smriti. I could explain it to you on the basis of all the Vedic literatures. He said, but rather, I would prefer to explain the answer to this question that you have by narrating a story to you that I heard from my spiritual master, Srila Shukadeva Goswami. And if you hear this story, then your doubts will become free. So he began telling the story. And that's a long story, and our time is short. You know, so much to do, so little time to do it in. Who's heard of Winston Churchill? Everybody.
Yeah.
You know that Mr. Churchill, he was accredited for winning the war for Britain, but he was a hopeless alcoholic. And after the war, he was running for prime minister, and he lost. He won the war, he lost the election. And during one of his campaign stops, he was in some school hall in Britain, and he was giving a lecture. And at that time, they used to paint the walls of the schools up to a certain level in brown paint. So if the kids were to like mess around on the walls, it wouldn't mess up the walls, you know. It would be painted brown to a certain level and beige up to the ceiling. And he was a hopeless alcoholic, and one lady in the audience stood up and said, "Mr. Churchill, you are an alcoholic. But you're not a regular alcoholic, you're a hopeless alcoholic. And we have made a calculation, and our calculation is this. In the course of your lifetime, you have drank enough whiskey to fill this room up to the level of the brown paint on the wall. What do you have to say about that?" And Churchill started looking at the wall, where the brown line was, looking at the ceiling, looking at the brown line, looking at the ceiling, looking at the brown line, looking at the ceiling, and then he looked at the lady and he said, "So much to do, so little time to do." He said, "I'll tell you a story that I heard from my spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami. And if you hear this story attentively, your doubts will become clarified." So this is a long story, and some of it I wish to read from the Brhad-Bhagavtamrta itself, so that you can actually hear the verses of Srila Sanatana Goswami. So we have some time, and maybe this evening I'll touch on it a little bit also, so that we don't eat up the whole day, because this is a katha that can go on for a long time. He begins his story by saying there was a poor Brahmin. And this poor Brahmin, he lived up in the northeast, in the area of Assam. Does anyone here know Assam? Assam is up above Bengal. And in that place, there was a deity of Durga Devi, and she is known as Kamakya Devi. Has anyone ever heard of Kamakya Devi? She was a famous Devi, very fierce form of Srimati Durgaji. And so fierce that even up to the time of the British, they were making, the people who lived in that place, they were making human sacrifices in that temple. It was like a real tantric place. But Srila Sanatana says this poor Brahmin, he lived in that area and he worshipped Kamakya Devi. And he was poor and he was illiterate. But he would go to the temple and he would pray to Srimati Durgaji and would say, "Please give me blessings. Please help me to attain some wealth in my life. Please help me." And so one evening, while the Brahmin was sleeping, Kamakya Devi appeared in the dream of the Brahmin. Do any of you all ever have deities appear in your dreams? Anyone? Sometimes people tell me that they see deities in their dreams. Very nice, you know. Very, very nice. Last night I saw a snake in my dreams. I don't know what that means, but I saw a big, long snake, you know. But Durgaji, Mother Durga, appeared in his dream and said, "My dear Brahmin, I will give you this mantra. You chant this mantra, and you will attain the greatest wealth that is to be attained." And she gave him an 11-syllable mantra. You know what the mantra was? The mantra was, "Gopi Jana Vallabhaya Swaha." I think that was it. That's 10?
Yeah.
Gopi Jana Vallabhaya Swaha. 10, no. I don't know where the 11th syllable was, but that was the mantra. This is a mantra that Lord Chaitanya had also. You know that? Have you heard that? He received that mantra from Ishwar Puri. I don't know how we got 10 and 11. But he received this mantra. Maybe it was Gopijana Balabhaya. And he started chanting the mantra. And he had no idea what it was going to do. But it was the name of God. And he didn't even know it was the name of God. He had no idea what the mantra meant. Basically, he was chanting in ignorance. And chanting in ignorance is called what? It's called Namaparad, correct? It's chanting when you absolutely have no knowledge. Like all of us, when we came to Krishna consciousness, many of us, we had some nice experience in chanting Mahamantra. We didn't know what it was. Absolutely, we didn't know what it was. Did anyone have that experience? No one. Amazing. I had that experience. I knew Mahamantra from impersonal yogi books. And I used to chant Mahamantra before, but I used to chant Mahamantra thinking that it was sort of like I was going to be like at the Durban World Cup Stadium, you know, on the center field, with all the lights turned off, and then I was going to be chanting Mahamantra, and then all the lights are going to come on. And I was going to see some sort of fantastic white light. That was my idea about chanting Mahamantra. Nothing ever happened. No lights ever turned on, you know. But the first time I chanted with Vaishnavas, I had this experience where, you know, the functioning of the mind had stopped, and tears came to the eyes, and like hair stood on end, and I was stunned, you know. And then when the mind started functioning again, then the first thought that I had was, whatever this song is, it must be God. Because nothing has had the power to affect my life in the way that this sound that I just sang has done. This must be God. And then the kirtan was over. It was at a music festival, and the kirtan was over, and everybody started going here and there, and I started to walk away. But one devotee lady, she saw that I'd had an experience, and she ran up to me and she said, "No, stop, don't go." She said, "I'll bring you prasadam." And I said, "What is prasadam?" She said, "I'll bring you spiritual food." And I said, "Okay, thank you." And she brought me like a plastic cup that had halava in it. And it wasn't a very opulent halava. It was just halava, you know. But I tasted it. And when I tasted it, I had the same experience that I did when I chanted the mantra. I said, "What is this stuff?" She said, "This is farina." I said, "No." I said, "How do you make this stuff?" She said, "This is farina, water, butter, and sugar." And I said, "Ma'am, when I was growing up and going to school, I used to get out of bed every morning, walk into the kitchen, put on a half pot of water, run in, take my shower, I'd come out, the water would be boiling. I would mix the suji inside, put sugar, put it in my bowl, put 200 grams of butter on it, and eat that, and I'd go to school. It never tasted like this." She said, "Oh, but we put a special ingredient inside." And I said, "What is that?" She said, "The saliva of Krishna." How's that for preaching? That's good preaching for newcomers, right? She said, "The saliva of Krishna," and my spiritual reference at that time was Christianity. So I went, "Jesus Christ." And I said, and then I paused and I said, "Well, I don't know who this Krishna is, but he's got some pretty tasty saliva." And then she said, wait, I'll get you something to drink." And she came back, she had a cup, and she handed it to me, liquid inside. And I said, what is this? And she said, this is lemonade. And I went, oh, sweet Lord Jesus. I said, they put the guy's saliva in the suji. How did they make it? But I drank it. And it was like ecstatic. Life story. I'm not making this up. And then I started to walk away, and the lady said, what is your name? I said, my name is Sean. She said, Sean, I want you to do something for me. I said, what is that? And she said, will you do it for me? I said, yes, I'll do anything. What do you want me to do? She said, I want you to go around this festival tonight, and I want you to tell everybody how wonderful is chanting Hare Krishna.
Sure.
Just go around and tell everybody how wonderful is chanting Hare Krishna. I said, certainly. And that night I walked around, I was telling everybody, boy, there are these great guys over here, and they're singing this Hare Krishna, and they're going to do it tomorrow morning, come back. Chanting Hare Krishna is the most wonderful thing. And it was only later on that I realized that through the lips of his disciples, that was the first instruction that I got from Srila Prabhupada. Just go around and tell everybody how wonderful chanting Hare Krishna is. And so I've been trying to do it for, God, how long now? 46 years? Some success, a lot of failure, but still, that's the instruction. Chanting Hare Krishna is wonderful. And then, festival was finished, and about a week later, I was in Rochester, New York, and I saw devotees on Harinam, and I got into ecstasy. And I went and I got in the line for the Harinam, and I started singing with them, and I felt that ecstasy again. And after about 45 minutes of just standing there, and I had like this long beard, long hair, and they were all in their robes, and I'm just standing there doing what they're doing, and I'm singing, and I'm in ecstasy. One of the devotees plucks up his courage, and he comes to me, and he says, do you know anything about chanting Hare Krishna? And I looked at him and I said, absolutely not. I said, the only thing that I know is that I like it. That's all I know. So that's the beginning. We come, we don't know anything, but we come in contact with the Maha Mantra. We come in contact with the name of God. Just like this Brahmin, he was given this mantra, Gopi Jana Balabhaya Swaha, yes, whatever. And he started chanting. And the effect was that he started becoming disinterested in his whole social situation. He started becoming disinterested in trying to make money. He started becoming disinterested in this. He started becoming disinterested in that. So what did he do? He left his home and he started wandering. And first place he wandered to is, like I said, Assam is up north in Bengal, and he wandered down to the Bay of Bengal, where the Ganga flows into the ocean. And every year, in January, they have a festival over there. It's called the Ganga Sagar Mela. And he went to the Ganga Sagar Mela, and he was amazed to see all these people. And it says they were mostly householders, Sanatana Goswami says. And they were mostly just doing all sorts of Vedic rites and Vedic rituals to make their situation better. Like I mentioned yesterday, the Sinti cloth market in Dubai, and there was the beautiful BMW with orange swastikas on it. It was outside Mahesh Advani's shop. But But they were mostly grihastas. And they were doing Vedic rituals. So he said he stayed there for some time. And he said he just kept chanting his mantra silently because Durga Devi had told him to chant his mantra. So he was just observing, and it was convenient for him because there, from performing all these yagyas, there was always Mahaprasadam. So he always had something to eat. And he was sort of interested in what they're doing because he could see that it was some type of spiritual activity that they were doing. But he just kept chanting his mantra. And by chanting his mantra, even though he didn't know what the mantra meant, no idea what the mantra meant, he lost interest. What these folks are doing is not giving me a buzz. There's not really anything interesting here. So he continued walking. And then he walked up to Prayag. Does anybody know Prayag? Anyone here know Prayag? Also is known as Allahabad. And that's where the Kumbh Mela takes place. That's where the Ganga and the Jamuna and the Saraswati come. And every year during the winter, when there's this correct astrological timing, people come there to take their bath because nectar is dripping, and if you take your bath at exactly the right time, you're assured of liberation. Has anyone ever done that, taken their bath? Or who has? I took my bath there. You took it there all? Huh?
Not during the time.
You have to go at the right time. Yeah. Just right on the Mahasnan day. We were there in 1989, and there were like a zillion billion people there. It's like, I'm not kidding. You don't know where they come from. Prabhupada says that Kumbh Mela is like the material world. He says it's a facility for coming, making some advancement, and getting out of the material world. Like 6 weeks before the Mela, there's nothing on the banks of the Ganga. 6 weeks before the Mela, a massive tent city grows on the banks of the Ganga. It's like that, isn't it? Huge tent city comes with electric and with water and with everything, just out of sand. The government puts it up. And it's a facility for the pious people to come and to hear from sadhus, hear from different spiritual leaders, so they can improve their situation to get out of the material world. Prabhupada said the material world is like that. The material world is not a place to come and enjoy. The material world is a place to come and do service so that you can get out of here and go back to Krishna. So he came to the Kumbh Mela. And there were sadhus there. And Sanatana Goswami says most of the sadhus at the Kumbh Mela, they were Vaishnavas. And they were having kirtan. So this Brahman is chanting his mantra. And these Vaishnavas are having kirtan all the time. And they're having kirtan, and they're crying. And they're fainting. And they're rolling on the ground. But nonetheless, kirtan is going on, like all the time. And finally the Brahman says, could you guys stop all of this ruckus? And just tell me what's going on? What is all this chanting about, And so they started telling him about Lord Vishnu, and they started telling him about, God, and how he could go to God. And wherever there are Vaishnavas, there's also always a lot of prasadam, correct? Always a lot of prasadam. You go to you go to, Raji's home, and his mom is she cooks, and boy can she cook. You go to Sunil's home, the monkey is there. She cooks. Boy, she can cook. I'm going up to Joburg after this, Mrinalini has already given me the order, you must come home. Mrinalini, she, Vaishnava home, she can cook, So it was nice for the Brahmin because he was around these people who were like doing all this chanting and dancing and all of this business. And they said, come with us, because we have a deity here. He said, what's a deity? He said, well, it's the Lord. We want you to see the deity. And so they took him to see the deity of Bindu Madhava at Dashashvamedha Ghat in Prayag. And he went to see. And he said, this is the Lord. This is the Lord of the universe. I've attained the fulfillment of all my desires. With my eyes, I'm seeing the Lord. And he stayed there just chanting his mantra and listening to this kirtan. And he said, but somehow or other, this Lord with 4 arms does not look like the Lord that I see when I chant my mantra. My Lord is dark. This Lord is white. My Lord has 2 arms. This Lord has 4 arms. And gradually, he started becoming depressed. What am I doing here? I'm in a situation that's not correct. Now, I'm chanting this, the Devi, she gave me this mantra. I'm chanting this mantra. Why is it I'm chanting and I don't feel satisfied? Has anyone ever felt that way before? Why is it I'm chanting and I don't feel satisfied? I'm saying the words that the Devi gave me to say. I don't feel satisfied. And he was becoming pretty depressed about the whole situation. He was with all these Vaishnavas, happy people, always chanting, always giving them prasadam, always doing kirtan. He wasn't satisfied. Finally, one night, in his dream, not only Devi appeared in the dream, but Lord Shiva appeared in his dream. And they said, dear Brahman, we have an instruction for you. Go to Vrindavan. And when you go to the fields of Vrindavan, all of your spiritual desires, all of your spiritual aspirations will become fulfilled. And then he woke up from his dream. He said, they told me to go to Vrindavan. And then he started asking people, where is Vrindavan? He didn't know anything. He was chanting, he was performing all these acts. He knew nothing. They said, this direction, start walking. So then he walked from from Prayag to Vrindavan. And he came to Vrindavan and it was beautiful. It was absolutely, at that time, Vrindavan was a jungle. Can you imagine, now we go to Vrindavan and we hardly see any trees in Vrindavan, isn't it? But you can imagine the Jamuna with thick, lush forests running the sides of the Jamuna. With creepers and all the trees. Are we having an emergency? Turn it off. Turn it off. Alas. So he went to Vrindavan and he was overwhelmed. This Brahmin, he's just wandering in Vrindavan and he's chanting his mantra the way that Devi told him. And still he doesn't have any knowledge of what he's doing. He's chanting. He's faithfully following the instruction that he's been given, but he doesn't have knowledge. And that's something that all of us have experienced also. We've faithfully received the mantra and we can chant without knowledge. Our life in Krishna consciousness is meant to continuously be increasing our knowledge of Krishna, not to be remaining stagnant. But he was chanting, and he was chanting, and then something interesting happened. And the interesting thing was this. He heard somebody chanting the holy names of the Lord. He heard somebody doing Nam Sankirtan. But he said it sounded, this person's chanting, it sounded like a woman who was crying desperately because her husband, that she loved so much, was in a faraway place. Just like Sunil the other day, he was in Paris. And when Kanaya Lal and I we were doing our walk in Westport, when we walked by his house, we heard this crying inside. He heard somebody chanting Hare Krishna in pure love. He wasn't hearing regular chanting of Hare Krishna. No, serious. He heard Prema Sankirtan. He heard the chanting of a person whose heart was overwhelmed with feelings of love and separation from Krishna. And he was saying, where is that chanting coming from? Where is that chanting coming from? It's so beautiful. Like I mentioned yesterday, this Srila Kinchana Krishnadas Baba, when he would chant Hare Krishna, it was like that. When he would chant japa, it was like that. When he would chant japa, it was like like Hare Krishna. I stayed with him one night, one morning back in 1978. Some of my godbrother and godsister came from Toronto. They said, we don't know what Vrindavan Parikram is. Can you take us on Vrindavan Parikram? I said, yes. It was winter time. So we left early. It was very cold. We came to Imlital. Does anyone know Imlital? We came to Imlital. The old temple was there. Now they have a new temple. We walked into the old temple, and just when we walked into the old temple, on the steps of the old temple, Srila Kinchana Krishnadas Baba was standing there. And he was surrounded by all these old, rugged-looking sadhus. They all had their hands in their bead bags. And I saw the Srila Kinchana Krishnadas, and I'd met him already. As soon as I saw him, I just laid down on the ground and I offered my dandavats. And I took dust from his lotus feet, and he looked at me. And he'd always do this whenever I came by. He'd like put his hand on his mouth and go. And I stood up, and he looked at me and said, today is Ekadashi. On Ekadashi night, I stay in this temple and I chant Hare Krishna all night long. Would you like to chant with me?
Sure.
When I heard that, I went, oh. And I said, I'd love to. I said, what time should I come? He said, you come about 8 o'clock tonight. So I was like really in ecstasy. We finished our parikrama, went back to the temple, did my service, and then I walked down to Imlital in the evening. Back then you couldn't even get rickshaws at that time of the night in Vrindavan because everybody was scared in Vrindavan. And I walked down and I went into the Imlital temple and I walked in and Babaji Maharaj is there. So I offered my dandavats, and they looked at me and said, I am just going to take prasadam. Would you like to take prasadam? Have you taken prasadam? I said, yes, Maharaj, I've taken prasadam. And then I looked at him, because Prabhupada said he was a pure devotee and everything. I looked at him like a fool. And I said, Maharaj, you take Prashadam on Ekadashi.
Sure.
And then he just went to the next room and he had a piece of apple. And he had a piece of water chestnut halva. Because that's all they had, you know. It wasn't a meal. And he was so kind, he brought me back a piece of apple. And he brought me back a piece of his water chestnut halva. He said, here, you take this. And then the room, it just had this wooden plank bed. You know, like in India, they have those wooden plank beds. And that's all that was in the room. And the room, it didn't have glass windows, it had wooden shutters. And because it was wintertime, the wooden shutters were closed. And the only light was in the room was like one of these 20-watt light bulbs, you know? One of these little tiny things. So it was like very dim in there. And he jumped up on the wooden bed, and I sat down by his feet. And, you know, his just back became very straight. And he put his hand in his bead bag. And then, like a fool, I wanted to ask him a question. I said, can I ask you a question? And he said, yes. I said, you know, many times we hear the songs of our Vaishnavacharyas, and we know the words that are in our songbook. But sometimes when we listen to the Bengali devotees sing, they sing lines that we don't know. Have you ever heard that before? Like this, and I said, for example, like this one song they sing, and then they sing, Patit Pavan Shri Gurudev, Ek Paramaya Korodoya. And I said, this Patit Pavan Shri Gurudev, Ek Paramaya, Korodoya. I said, what does that mean? When he folded his hands, he said, this means, Ayodhya Pati, please put your lotus feet on my head. When he said that, I said, that means it's time for me to shut up. And then he looked up, he said, tonight, there is one mantra that we will not chant. So we became curious. We said, what mantra is that? He said, we will not chant this mantra. Krishna, Hari, Snik, Ram, 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 Hari, Snik, Ram, Hari, Ram, 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 Hari, 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 Ram, 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 Ram. He said, rather, tonight we're going to chant this mantra. And then he just went, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And that was it. And it was just sort of like, he just took off at that point. And he was like with Krishna. Kalas. It was just like that. And that was he started about 9 o'clock at night. And by the grace of God, I stayed awake. And I just sat there trying to chant, but I kept listening to him. And his chanting was like that, like what that Brahmin heard in the forest. He heard this crying. Somebody really crying. And as it went on, it was like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Didn't stop. Didn't skip a beat all night long. Oh, the thing he told us, he said, I thought when he said, come, we're going to chant, we're going to do bhajan, because he was such a great kirtan leader. He said, tonight we're going to chant 64 rounds. When he said, tonight we're going to chant 64 rounds, inside I went, oh, damn. I said, I came here for fun. And now we're going to have to work. And we're going to have to work. And then he said, and not this mantra, but this mantra. And as soon as he chanted, he was absorbed. He was with Krishna. It went on all night. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was the pujari at Prabhupada's Samadhi. And I had to wake up Prabhupada at 3:45 in the morning. So at 3 o'clock, I wanted to leave and go back to the temple and have my shower. So at 3 o'clock, and I wanted to take permission to leave. So at 3 o'clock I started going, Babaji Maharaj. He's like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Babaji Maharaj. Hare Ram, Hare Ram. Babaji Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Babaji Maharaj. You know, what? And I said, Babaji Maharaj, I have to go. He looked at me and he said, Go! He said, go! Get out of here immediately! Leave this place!
Sure.
You know, and I got sort of like a little bit freaked out. And I offered my obeisances, and I stood up to leave, and then he folded his hands. He said, but promise me one thing. Please promise me one thing. And I said, what is that? He said, Kirtaniya Sudahari. Always chant the holy name. Please chant the holy name. Now you can go. And I went. So this Brahmin, he heard this crying in the forest. And it was like chanting in a way, chanting the names of God in a way that he had never heard before. It was so beautiful. So he started making his way through the thickness of the forest. And Sanatana Goswami says Vrindavan forest was so thick that in the thickness of it all, sometimes sunlight couldn't even shine in. Imagine how beautiful Vrindavan must have been. And he came to this place. And he saw there was a boy. Just a young cowherd boy. And he was sitting there and he was chanting Hare Krishna. He was crying. Every time he was chanting Hare Krishna, he was crying. He was crying for Krishna. He was crying for his Lord that he loved. It wasn't mechanical chanting. It wasn't chanting in ignorance. It wasn't chanting while driving the car. It wasn't chanting anything like that. He was like crying with each and every mantra. And this Brahmin came to the boy, and the boy looked so beautiful. And the boy inside of himself, he said, he started thinking. And he started thinking. He said, he chants the same mantra that I chant. He has been sent to me. So I can actually explain to him the process of chanting his mantra so that he can attain perfection. And Sanatana Goswami says in the purport that actually the Lord, the Lord knew, or actually, he says, Srimati Radharani knew that the Brahmin was going to come there that day. So she had sent Gopkumar to the forest to be there when the Brahmin came. And Gopkumar said, he chants the same mantra as I chant. And the mantra is the mantra from Madan Gopal. And the mantra is the mantra of Sanatana Goswami's deity, which is Madan Mohan, the name of God. He chants the same mantra. He said, therefore, I have to enlighten him. He said, and already he has attained qualifications that he doesn't really have to do anything else now, because he has heard me chanting. He has heard chanting in prema. He doesn't have to do anything else. But still, I should give him knowledge. And then the boy thought, he said, really, it's not good for people to talk about themselves. He said, but I think that if I want to convince this person how to perform his spiritual life properly, I should tell him my own story. He said, although we shouldn't talk about ourselves. he said, I'm going to tell him my story. And so then he began speaking. And he told the Brahmin, he said, my dear Brahmin, he said, I'm a Vaishya. Oh, and also he knew something else about the Brahmin. Just by seeing the Brahmin, he knew that the Brahmin's family had originally resided in Mathura before they'd gone to the northeast. And so since he came from a family of Brajavasis, he was qualified also. So he told him, he said, my dear Brahmin, I'm a Vaishya. He said, me and my friends, all we do is we take our cows to the Vrindavan forest. And we herd our cows. And you know, something interesting happened. He said, one day, when my friends, he said on many days actually, when I and my friends were taking the cows into the forest, we saw one exalted sadhu in the forest. And he was always chanting the names of God, names of God, names of the Lord. Always chanting. But he was chanting in such a peculiar way. So sometimes he'd be chanting, he'd be dancing like a madman. Sometimes he'd be chanting, he'd be rolling in the dust. Sometimes tears would be coming out of his eyes. Sometimes his face would be covered with mucus. You know, he was chanting in such an extreme condition, but he was always chanting the holy names of the Lord. And even though he was a Brahmin, when he saw us cowherd boys, he would always stand up, fold his hands, and then he'd bow down and he'd offer his obeisances to us. And Sanatana Goswami says that the Brahmin was doing that because he saw the cowherd boys as all being the cowherd boy associates of Sri Krishna. And he said that Brahmin, he was pleased with me because I used to render some service to him. And he said the service that I would do is I would bring him, you know, sometimes I'd bring him milk, sometimes I'd bring him yogurt, sometimes I'd bring him some butter, because we're Vaishyas and we have these things. And I would render this simple service. And whenever I would do this, he would always affectionately stroke my head, and he would always give me embraces, and me and the other boys, he would smother us with loving kisses. And he said, one time, I saw this Brahmin, and he was on the banks of the Jamuna. And the Brahmin looked at me, and he said, my dear boy, he said, if you wish to attain the greatest and the most wonderful mercy of God, go take your bath in the Jamuna and come back here. I have something to give you. So the boy said he quickly went to the Jamuna, took a dip, purifying dip. He came back, and the Brahmin said, I will give you a mantra. And he gave him the same mantra of God's name. And he told the boy the mantra. And then the Brahmin began to describe the glories of what the mantra meant. But as soon as he said the name Madan Gopal, as soon as he said Krishna's name, he went into ecstasy. He fell on the ground, and he started rolling back and forth. And the boy went, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? What's happening to him? And then the Brahmin stood up, and in such a frustrated situation, he just walked away. That was his initiation from his spiritual master. Can you imagine? I mean, for most of us, we got, well, I mean, I received my initiation through a letter, and I hardly ever had Prabhupada's association. But all of you have the association of your spiritual masters, and your spiritual masters have spent time with you, and your spiritual masters have explain to you about the science of Krishna consciousness and chanting the holy names, and have shared things with you, shared their spiritual secrets with you. This boy, his guru just gave him the mantra, and he said, chant this mantra with faith. And then he started to try to describe the mantra. He went into ecstasy and he collapsed on the ground. And then he just got up, and because he was feeling separation from the Lord of his mantra, he just walked away. And that's the last the boy saw, Guru Maharaj. That's pretty extreme, isn't it? Extreme situation. And can you imagine if like, you got initiation from Srila Giriraj Swami Maharaj, and he said, your name is Sarup Damodar, and he just got up and walked out the door. I said, your name is Sarup Damodar. And then he just collapsed on the ground and started rolling back and forth, and, you know, tears started flowing from his eyes, and you probably did think, oh my God, what'd I do to Guru Maharaj? That's what the boy thought. But he just walked away. But because the boy had observed that saint, and he'd seen that he had such nice character, and he had faith in that saint, he started chanting. He started chanting. Silently, he started chanting his mantra. And then his journey began also. And he's telling this to his Brahmin disciple. He says, and then I left Vrindavan. My journey began. And the first thing he did is he went, and by chanting this mantra that he received, something started growing inside of him. And what that thing was that was growing inside of him was the desire to see the Lord and the desire to serve the Lord. He lost interest. I mean, he loved Vrindavan the way that most of us love Vrindavan, loved a lot more than what we love Vrindavan. He left Vrindavan. Went on a journey. First place, he saw some Brahmin doing puja to the Shalagram Shila, and he saw the Shalagram Shila. He said, what is this stone? He said, this is the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He said, oh, this is the Lord of the universe. And then he saw when the Brahmin's puja was finished, the Brahmin took the Shalagram Shila, put it in a box, closed the box. The boy said, what are you doing with the Lord? You can't keep the Lord in a box. That's rude. You know, and you hardly gave him anything to eat. You have to give the Lord something to eat. And the Brahmin said, but I'm poor. All I could give him was just a little bit. The Brahmin said, no, this isn't correct. Then the Brahmin told him, he said, actually, if you want to see proper worship of the Lord, then there's a king in a nearby kingdom. He worships the Lord with opulence. So Sanatana Goswami says the boy never stopped silently chanting his mantra. And he kept chanting. He went to the kingdom, and he met the king, and he saw the deity which is being worshipped. And he became filled with ecstasy. He said, now I have seen the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they were giving lots of prasadam there. You know, abundant prasadam. But there was a problem. You know what the problem was? That sometimes people who were not Brahmins would come and take the prasadam of the Lord, and they would leave something behind. And then the people in the temple, they would say, no, that food has become untouchable, throw it away. He said, how can it be that the Lord's prasadam is always pure, but they're throwing, just because a person has touched the Lord's prasadam, they're throwing it away. When you all were young devotees, were you really never threw away prasadam? When we were young devotees, I mean, we were different back then. If we spilled milk on the floor, we would lick it up. Not to waste prasadam. There was one lady in our temple, her name was Krishnamai, or maybe it was even Maya Devi. She was initiated by Prabhupada. After the Sunday feast, she used to collect all the plates of the guests. She would take all the prasadam from their plates. That's what she would eat as her prasadam. She had so much faith in prasadam. So much faith in prasadam. My temple president was Gunagrahi Maharaj. And if we didn't have a refrigerator in our temple, and sometimes we cooked dal on one day, and Ekadashi was going to be the next day. It was like hot in the summer. And by the evening time, the dal would start bubbling in the pot. In the evening, he'd call us all together. We had to eat all the dal. So much faith in prasadam. And the boy was saying, they can't honor the Lord. And he became disgusted at that place also. And then they told him, but actually, if you want to see real opulent, if you want to see the real Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's a place in Orissa, which is called Jagannath Puri. And there you should go and see the Supreme Lord. So now it's 10 after. I'm going to read Brhad-Bhagavtamrta for about 10 minutes, okay? And we'll try to... Gop Kumar is going to have his second meeting with Guru Maharaj, and there's going to be good spiritual instruction there for all of us. Okay? So let me just get the section and read it. Okay. This is very important. This is very important instruction in this part for all of us. When I read it, I think that most of us will be able to identify with the instruction which is being given. So he's approaching. He's in Jagannath Puri. And who here has been to Jagannath Puri? Who of you have been sneaky enough to go inside the temple? Howdy, Bob. They don't let us widows go inside. Sarup tried to get it also, they chucked him out. He was like, Sarup was like too white for the Jagannath Puri people. Kirtan, you know, it goes on everywhere. Even in the Lord's abode, it goes on there also. You know. They won't let us see God because they say we're the wrong color. You know, it goes on everywhere. From a distance, I saw the moonlight face of Lord Purushottam, his broad eyes shining brilliantly, his forehead decorated with tilak made of gems. His complexion glowed like a cloud full of rain, and the effulgence of his dawn-colored lips was all attractive. Moonbeams of unlimited satisfaction emanated from his smile, adding to his beauty. Isn't that beautiful? You know, just from Jagannath's smile, moonbeams of satisfaction were flooding the hearts of everyone. Struck by the ecstasy of pure love and impeded by some trembling that began in my body, I was unable to go forward despite my desire. But somehow or other, I reached the Garuda column in the temple, and my hair was standing on end, and my vision was clouded by tears. I saw Lord Jagannath, bedecked with jewelry, divine garments, and flower garlands. The sight of him increased the pleasure of my eyes and mind. As he sat playfully on his lion throne, he ate the wonderful varieties of attractive food being offered to him. With love, he watched his devotees busily singing, dancing, playing music, offering prayers, and bowing down to him. Bewildered by seeing that supremely splendorous pageant, I fell and I fainted upon the floor. When I came to my senses and opened my eyes, I gazed upon Lord Jagannath again. Then, like a madman, I started just running to Jagannath, and I wanted to grasp him and to put my arms around him. I cried out, "Now I am seeing what for so long I wanted to see. From today, my life has become real life. I have obtained the Lord of the universe, my master." At that moment, just when I was about to put my arms around Lord Jagannath, I was stopped by the blows of the sticks of the guards of Lord Jagannath. Don't try to hug Jagannath unless he's on the Rath cart during Rath Yatra. Otherwise, you're going to get in trouble. Some years ago, maybe a long time, maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I'm somewhere in the world. I get a telephone call one day from one eccentric disciple of mine. He was going, "Guru Maharaj! Guru Maharaj! Do you know where I am?" I said, "No." I said, "Where are you?" He said, "I am on Lord Jagannath's cart, standing in front of Lord Jagannath at Rath Yatra, Guru Maharaj. What should I do?" I said, "Throw your arms around Jagannath and give him a kiss."
Oh.
All of a sudden, there's silence on the line. And then about 30 seconds later, he said, "Guru Maharaj, I just kissed Lord Jagannath." Probably one of the best instructions I ever gave. He did it. I said, "Now go to Balaram's cart and do it there also." But he was trying, this Gop Kumar was trying to run to Lord Jagannath, and just before he could throw his arms around, the guards started beating him, and he fell to the ground. Realizing what I'd done, I felt embarrassed, but I thought, this is the Lord's mercy. Then I went outside, and they gave me a generous amount of Lord Jagannath's Mahaprashadam. O Brahmin, after eating that Mahaprashadam, I quickly re-entered the Lord's temple. From the wonders I then saw, I felt a reservoir of happiness that I am unable to understand in my heart, let alone to describe with the words of my mouth. I simply stood there all day long, staring at Lord Jagannath and relishing bliss. Can you imagine how much ecstasy and nectar he was feeling just by seeing Jagannath? And he was feeling, I have obtained the Lord of my life. And Sanatana Goswami's commentary says, Gop Kumar's heart could not assimilate everything he was relishing, one amazing thing after the other without stop, and each wonder that he saw was more inconceivable than the last. How then could he properly describe what he saw? The power of speech is usually slower and more limited than the power of the mind. Then Gop Kumar says, at night there was a great festival with the Lord dressed and ornamented in elaborate splendor. But finally, after a great ceremony with offerings of palmfuls of flowers, it was time to leave the temple. As I thus enjoyed ever new festivals in the company of saintly devotees, time passed unnoticed. Then he says, I even seemed to forget my sorrow of my separation from the land of Braja. Everywhere I heard about and saw for myself the most exalted mercy of Lord Sri Jagannath on his servants and perceived the various commands that he gave them. So he was like, from chanting his mantra that he'd received from his Guru Maharaj, chanting it and just because he didn't know anything what the mantra was. But because his Guru Maharaj told him to chant the mantra, and he had respect and faith in his Guru Maharaj, already by the time he's coming to Jagannath Puri, he's seeing Lord Jagannath do miracles. I mean, he was becoming advanced by chanting the mantra. Other than the sight of Lord Jagannath, nothing attracted me. I even lost interest in hearing about his glories from the Puranas. The only thing he wanted to do was just stand and look at the Lord. Has anyone ever felt that way when you're having darshan of deity somewhere? You just want to stand and look forever. It's like, true confession? It's like that for us when we're in Vrindavan and we go to Radharaman. You know? Because at ISKCON, Radhasham Sundar are so extraordinarily beautiful and attractive, but there's always such a rush there of basically sort of like tourist type people, you know? Like people on yatras and pilgrimages, and you're trying to stand and pray to the Lord, and you have, you know, Punjabi grannies standing on your head, you know, people clawing you out of the way so they can get up front, and you're trying to do dandavats and people are walking on you, you know. And I think, well, that's good for me, but it's hard for having darshan. But if you go to Radharaman, you can just stand there and stare, and just as long as he's open, you just stand there and you stare. No one will touch you. You know, no one will bang you, no one will push you, no one will grab you. Like last week at Radharaman, it was so beautiful. There was this Goswami, I forget his name now. I met him, I spoke to him. He was doing puja, his family is very wealthy, and every evening the darshan was phenomenal. And the kirtan was phenomenal. Every night there was a different flower arrangement. You know, millions of these white jasmine flowers, you know, and beautiful first-class kirtan every evening. Oh, it was just something. And then the night before I came here, it was Rath Yatra. And on that night, you know, Radharaman was standing on a silver chariot drawn by silver horses. I mean, huge silver chariot. And you could just stand and stare and stare and stare and pray and pray and pray. And, you know, no one would bang you or no one would push you. It was wonderful. And for the Shayan Arti, when Radharaman goes to sleep, what they would do is they would turn off all the lights in the temple room, and the only way that Radharaman was illuminated was by the deepa that they were offering to him. Oh, it was so beautiful. And after the arti, they would turn the lights back on, and then the flute Goswami, who plays the flute to put Radharaman to sleep every night, and he'd play the flute for a few minutes so Radharaman could hear the sweet flute song. And then, and so peaceful. And this Gopakumar, he just like, all he wanted to do was see Lord Jagannath. Just stare at Lord Jagannath, and Lord Jagannath was performing miracles in front of him. And even if I sometimes underwent physical or mental distress, as soon as I saw the lotus-eyed Lord, the pain disappeared. And Srila Sanatana Goswami says, it is to be expected that any embodied soul will often be distracted from the ecstasy of seeing Lord Jagannath's face by unavoidable physical and mental disturbances. Diseases constantly threatened the bodies of the conditioned souls, and all kinds of desires and vexations constantly passed through their minds. Gop Kumar also felt these natural disturbances, but they at once disappeared whenever he came before Lord Jagannath. The bliss he felt from seeing the Lord made him forget his troubles. Thus, please, my dear devotees, don't fall asleep, okay? If you're asleep, please wake up. Thus, thinking I had attained the final result of my chanting, I became indifferent, even to chanting. For many days I lived in the city of Lord Jagannath in such perfect happiness. Did you hear that? Mm-hmm. He was like in so much ecstasy, just having darshan of the Lord, that he became indifferent to everything, and also he became indifferent to chanting the mantra that his Guru Maharaj gave him. My dear devotees, please never become indifferent to chanting your japa. Especially those who are initiated. We have made a promise that we are going to do it. Please do it. Don't become indifferent. I then began to feel the urge for more intimate service to the Lord, but this desire also brought me great pain because it remained unfulfilled. Now please listen. On special festival days, the Lord's chief servant, the mighty king who ruled the country, came to the holy city to see the Lord's transcendental face. To prevent problems like disturbances to respectable people and damage to the Lord's gardens, unimportant people like me were forbidden to see the Lord freely. Meaning when the king would come, then they would like close things off, and insignificant people couldn't come. And at those times, Gop Kumar, he couldn't have darshan of Lord Jagannath. Then he said, one day, when I thus felt sick in my heart, I looked up in the temple and I saw my spiritual master standing in front of Sri Jagannath Dev, overwhelmed by the highest ecstasy of ecstatic love. So this is his second meeting with his Guru Maharaj. He met him first in the forest of Vrindavan, then he disappeared, and then one day he's in the temple of Jagannath, and he's looking up, and all of a sudden Guru Maharaj is right in the front of the crowd, and he's just dancing in ecstasy, and he's chanting the holy names, and overwhelmed with the highest ecstasy. But before I could speak to him, he left to go somewhere, and my mind was so attracted to the beautiful face of Lord Jagannath that I didn't notice which way my Guru Maharaj had left. And Sanatana Goswami says, Gop Kumar made a serious mistake by neglecting to follow his Guru and to meet him. But it was not offensive because he had innocently fallen victim to Lord Jagannath's extreme beauty. So generally, if Guru Maharaj is around, you should pay attention to Guru Maharaj. But if you're in ecstasy by seeing the face of Lord Jagannath, and you don't see which door Guru Maharaj goes out of, then it's not an offense. For days, I searched here and there trying to find my spiritual master. And then one day, I found him on the shore of the ocean, dancing alone in the great ecstasy of Nam Sankirtana. He was looking, where is Guru Maharaj? Where is Guru Maharaj? Let me find him. And then he went to the ocean, And he saw this Guru Maharaj was alone, dancing, on the shore of the ocean, and performing Nam Sankirtana. Seeing me prostrating myself like a rod upon the ground, my all-knowing master gave me his blessings. Then he embraced me, and he mercifully said this to me. My dear boy, whatever you desire while chanting your mantra, by its power, you will fully achieve. Indeed, by chanting your mantra, you will attain more than what you desire. Very big instruction as Guru Maharaj gave him. This is like first instruction that he's given, because when he first met him, he just said, chant the mantra. Then he went into ecstasy and he left. So now he's giving him an instruction about chanting Hare Krishna. He says, my dear boy, whatever you will desire to attain by chanting your mantra, surely you will attain that by the grace of the mantra. He said, actually, not only will you attain that, but you will attain much more. Now let us listen to Srila Sanatana Goswami. Before performing any religious ritual, including the chanting of mantras, one should solemnly formulate one's sankalpa. And then in parentheses, it says sankalpa is meaning one's intention for chanting the mantra, either verbally or mentally. In most Vedic sacrifices, one can expect one's sankalpa to be filled only in the indefinite future, most likely in the next life. But by the blessings of his guru, Gokumar's specific sankalpas would be quickly realized, as we will see as his story continues. So this is an instruction for us. Every mantra that is chanted has a deity. Is that correct? Every mantra has a deity. So we're chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And who is the deity of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra? Huh? Radha and Krishna. They're the deities of the mantra. There have been many commentaries and many explanations of Maha Mantra given by different acharyas. Raghunath Das